Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is another installment in my series, What If Cinema. And this time around, the film that is the focus of this particular video is RoboCop 3, or as I like to call it, RoboCop 3, What If It Didn't Suck? Now, before I go any further sharing my thoughts on this reimagining of RoboCop 3, I want to give a special shout out to Volante for requesting this video. And if there's another topic, review of a film or a TV show that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below. I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, my vision for RoboCop 3 is pretty radical. It's pretty out of the box, but I think it's something that, if it's executed properly, would not only be something special, but something spectacular and a really satisfying way to cap off this franchise, let alone end the story of Murphy. I would start RoboCop 3 off with a bang, literally. It starts off with nuclear war. Not because I'm trying to copy or ape the Terminator. I think it's a really logical progression for this franchise to eventually turn into a post-apocalyptic film series, because of the fact that OCP seems like a company that is just willing to do anything for money and power, and it seems like the exact kind of company that would have somebody who would eventually run for president and then cause nuclear war. And that's exactly how it would open up the film. You would have media break segments showing the rise in power of this OCP chairman. Maybe it's the old man. The old man runs for president, runs for the office, and he wins in a landslide, and he's president of the United States, and he is just really bad at world politics, and he screws up and causes nuclear war. He did get Delta City, though. He got his Delta City, but at a price. And I think that would be really fitting. I think it'd be a good bit of satire, especially for this series. And yeah, it would open up with a bang, the nuclear war, and then you would jump cut to the remains, the dusty, dilapidated, bombed out remains of the old man's vision of what he feels Detroit should be, or any city should be, in Delta City, just completely just annihilated. And you would have a group of survivors, and a very key integral part of this group is, of course, Murphy, RoboCop. And I would not only have RoboCop be a survivor, but you would also have Officer Lewis and Sergeant Reed. And Sergeant Reed and Lewis would be a little older, not a little, I mean, they would be considerably older, a little bit more grizzled, definitely have more tread on their tires, so to speak, maybe a few scars. Murphy would have some dents and some rust and some other things going on with his armor, and him not necessarily being as quick to the draw anymore. But not to the extent of him being like a mobile or being, a complete junk pile. No, like he'd still look like RoboCop, but definitely weathered and a little bit more battle damaged. Kind of similar to what you kind of saw in RoboCop, and when he was shot up by the SWAT team and Ed 209. And even in the future, though, RoboCop can't escape the clutches or the target of OCP. OCP still has its target on him. He still has this massive target on his back. OCP still wants him destroyed because In this vision of RoboCop 3, OCP is still very much in power, but it's the remains, the remnants of OCP's military and corrupt police force who have created their own stranglehold out of what is left of the OCP tower. And they have gotten the help from desert punks and other criminals who were foraging and trying to survive, as well as these mutants. Because I figure, why not? Why not go there? Have mutants, looking like Emil did when he crashed into the toxic waste, but various different types and just people just looking all kinds of fucked up. And you'd have these mutants and these punks that'd be teaming up with OCP, and they're trying to choke out what is left of this resistance, and the people who just want to live. They don't want to live under tyrannical rule. They've already dealt with the nuclear war and trying to just make ends meet and trying to live through the next day. They don't want to deal with OCP and their bullshit anymore. So OCP, though, they want to still have control, even though it's just such a little tiny shred of control of just barely anybody. And it's just a great way to show just how petty OCP is. Like, even in the future, when everything's a wasteland, they still want as much profit and they still want as much control as they could possibly get. Even when OCP isn't technically even necessarily an entity anywhere else in the world. It's just this one part of Detroit that they just cannot let go of. And it's up to RoboCop and the Resistance, the freedom fighters, to finally destroy the last vestiges of Omni consumer products. And of course, you'd have like some big over the top villain who was like the head of OCP. He was like the king, and he would be the main source of strife for pretty much everybody who isn't a part of his police force. And he wants RoboCop dead, wants his head on a pike. And I would also throw in some extra bits of characterization in the form of Murphy by actually bringing in his son. I think that would be really intriguing. I would set it up where Murphy and Lewis and Sergeant Reed, they're wandering through the wastelands. They are attacked by these group of punks or these mutants. This guy comes in and he takes them out. He even flips his gun like Murphy does, and like TJ Laser. And initially, Murphy's thinking, is that my son? Because he's been searching. He's been trying to find his son for this entire time, for all these years, or his wife, because he lives with these regrets that he told them in RoboCop 2 that they made this to honor him and that he was dead. And as the narrative progresses, as the story goes on, you get to see that this man is in fact Murphy's son. And that causes strife between Murphy and his son initially, where Murphy's son is mad at his father for lying and not telling the truth, and he's upset because he feels like that he and his mom could have made it work, even as awkward and as hard as it would have been. They would have found a way to make it work, and he never gave them a chance. And there's some really good drama there. and that causes a lot of strain on the two, and a strain on Murphy and Lewis too, because I would establish that the two of them have become very close. She has been uh, somewhat of a lover. Like they don't have intercourse, because there's just no way that they could, but she does love Murphy in a very deep and compassionate way, and they are very uh, bonded to one another in numerous different ways, and she protects him and he protects her. She repairs him. She fixes him up, and that's why Murphy's son being brought back in, it creates a lot of different sort of issues with the dynamic in the relationship. You have Lewis, who didn't know. She had no idea that Murphy did what he did, and because he never talked about it. So then Lewis is like, wait a second, what do you mean you didn't tell them the truth? What do you mean you told them that you were dead? Like, that kind of thing. But of course, eventually throughout the film and the narrative, they sort out their differences and they're close, like a family. Even though Murphy's son is a man, he's not a kid, he's not a teenager either, because it's just too. I mean, you could maybe do the teen thing, but I would say 18, like a young man at least. He would have to be. I don't want him to be like old, but like at least like 18, like not a kid, not like Nico age, because that wouldn't necessarily make any sense anyway when it comes to Murphy's son. And yeah, you would have the eventual realization that his mom didn't make it, and so on and so forth, and so you'd have that bit of emotional drama as well. But yeah, they would become very close, and Murphy's son would fight alongside his father, and they'd be both doing the pistol twirls, and Murphy would even allow his son to use the Auto 9 in one scene. I think that would be really cool to see. It's a way for things to come full circle. It's a way for Murphy to regain more of his humanity by reconnecting with his son. And by the end of the film, the group of remaining resistance fighters, they would overthrow OCP in a bloody battle. And I would even have some stuff with the mutants that would almost be like a horror film, where they're stalking Murphy and Lewis and his son in one scene, and they have to try to find a way to take out the mutants before the mutants take them out. Like maybe like a sequence at night. I think that'd be pretty cool. I would incorporate the gun arm thing, but in a different sort of way. Instead of it being like just an attachment that's there that was built by OCP, it's something that Murphy creates himself. It's a personal thing. He gets involved in a battle. Maybe during the battle with one of the mutants, he loses one of his arms. He loses an arm. Or maybe during the battle with the main villain, he loses one of his arms to make it even more personal. So he loses one of his arms or his hand, and he just finds whatever he and his group can dig up, and creates this weapon made out of scrap metal that can actually fire guns. And I mean, fire, not guns. Couldn't that be a gun that fires guns? No, a gun that fires bullets, and maybe even a bomb or two. I think that'd be pretty cool. I think that'd be really awesome. Like maybe he finds like one of OCP's military trucks, and it had this like weapon on it that had like a 50 cal and some of this other stuff, and then he just like finds a way to fashion it onto his arm. And in a way that's kind of similar to what Ash did in Army of Darkness, when he created that hand out of all the different materials that he found in the Middle Ages. Um, no jetpack because that's just stuff to sell toys. I would have the Ed 209 involved too. I think that'd be really cool to incorporate the Ed 209, and maybe that's kind of like a vehicle, or at least that's not necessarily a vehicle, but it's an enforcer for the resistance force, similar to what is happening in RoboCop 3, but it's not loyal as a puppy or anything. Like, it's considered an antique. It's all rusted out and whatever, but they found a way to make it work and reprogrammed it, and it gets involved in the final battle and blows some trucks up, and there's some nice moments of fan service with the Ed 209. And yeah, it would end with OCP finally getting destroyed, finally being put out of business for good, and RoboCop, Lewis, Sergeant Reed, and Murphy's son, they would, with the help of all the remaining survivors, rebuild society and rebuild Detroit in their image. And I think it would be a really fitting conclusion, and a very final conclusion to the RoboCop saga. It ended on a good note. I mean, he's been through enough. Like, why not let Murphy have somewhat of a happy ending? Yeah, the world has gone to hell, and it's just an irradiated wasteland, and it's just a nightmare. But things have calmed down. They can rebuild it, and he's defeated his nemesis in OCP. It's destroyed for good. He's got his woman by his side, and Lewis, and he's got his son. And you could have Murphy actually smile. He's happy. That's the basic gist of the story, the script that I have in mind. In terms of other parts of the film, the casting, I mean, Peter Weller is going to be he's going to be RoboCop. Like, I kind of flub my words there because I can't imagine anyone else in my fantasy vision of RoboCop 3 playing Murphy, playing RoboCop. I think with this take on the character, I think there's a lot for Peter to work with, and I think it's something he would definitely appreciate, especially with a lot of the drama involving Murphy and his son, and just the whole idea of RoboCop being like this older, kind of rustier, just kind of beaten down, worn a version of the character. And it's kind of similar to what he did in Screamers, because that's kind of a post-apocalyptic film in some ways. And I would have Nancy Allen, of course. She would be back as Ann Lewis with, some old age makeup, but nothing too crazy. Maybe some gray hairs and stuff like that. Robert Doquey would be back as Sergeant Reed. I would have the villain. I would have him played by Powers Booth. I think that would be a great bit of casting. If not Powers Booth, Lance Henriksen, because that would be great. That would be awesome. I definitely want somebody with that kind of presence, more than what Nick Castle can provide. That's for damn sure. No evil Steve Martins in this RoboCop 3. And I'd have, in terms of a director, I mean, of course, going back to the casting, I mean, in terms of somebody to play Murphy's son, I think you could have someone like Dylan McDermott, who is really good in Hardware. And Hardware is kind of what I'm looking for in terms of like the vision of the wasteland anyway. So I think, he would be a good pick. Or someone along those lines as an actor, maybe maybe an unknown like Kyle Secor, who I think was really great in Tales from the Crypt episode called The Thing from the Grave. I believe that's what that episode was called. I could be wrong, but he was really good in an episode of Tales from the Crypt with Miguel Ferrer. So yeah, I would have, maybe someone like that. And when it comes to the direction, I mean, my ideal pick is still Paul Verhoeven. I know I picked him multiple times when it comes to these RoboCop videos, these what if RoboCop videos, but I mean, he's just the best guy for the job. I mean, it's Paul Verhoeven. He knows this character of RoboCop and this world and everything like the back of his own hand. And to see like an epic post-apocalyptic, hyper violent opus. Opus isn't the right word, but just a post-apocalyptic epic, and have it be in the RoboCop franchise and by Paul Verhoeven. That's a match made in heaven, because I don't even know if he even did a post-apocalyptic film, and he's perfect for that. I would say the closest he did was Starship Troopers, when I think about it, but he would have been perfect for this kind of movie. If not him, somebody like Peter Hyams. I think he would have been a good pick to direct this film, because he's really good at directing stuff with heavy visual effects and size and scope and motion, and he's really good at shooting action sequences. So I think he would be a good pick if, for whatever reason, Paul is not available. I would have Rob Bottin, of course, back doing the effects, doing the battle damaged, worn, rusty suit for RoboCop, doing the old age makeup for the older versions of Lewis and Reed, doing the gore, and because in this version it's rated R. I didn't make that clear, but I mean, I said it was going to be bloody and it was going to be pretty hyper violent. It's a given. It's a given that this version of RoboCop 3 would be rated R. No PG-13 bullshit here. Like hard R. Like people getting blown to bits, like Kinney in the opening, like not the opening, but in that boardroom scene in RoboCop. Ed 219 mowing through people. RoboCop with his handmade gun arm attachment, just blowing through people and turning them into hamburger meat. And then of course Rob Bottin creating a bunch of crazy, just whacked out, just horrifying mutants. I think that would just be so cool, and I think he would be very up for that. He would have a lot of fun with that and really roll with that for this kind of project. Basil Polidorus would be brought back to do the score, because I can't think of anyone else. Of course, the main theme would still be there, but there would also be a lot more darker, a lot more intense bits of music that are almost horrifying, or just really just unnerving, because I think that would fit some of the stuff. Because I plan on not only having like scenes with the mutants being like creepy, but I also want to have like the main villain, like he's a sadistic bastard. Like this guy will actually torture people and do all kinds of just sick shit to people. Maybe he's even like doing fucking experiments on the side, like creating his own like fucked up, failed RoboCop prototypes, because he's trying to do everything that he can to eliminate Murphy. And I think the score would definitely reflect a lot of that stuff. And yeah, in my intended vision of this film, it would be a big budget movie. It would not be a small budgeted film, because it would have to be. And it would be something that would be coming out like after RoboCop 2, and after RoboCop 2 did really well financially for the studio. So Orion is releasing it, but they're not in a bad shape financially, because this is just a fantasy scenario anyway. So they're not in that bad of shape. Or if Orion still went under, then this would be a Carolco film. Carolco would have bought the rights, or Carolco, or however you want to say it, and this would have came out like after, something like around the time of Basic Instinct or something like that, or afterwards. But then again, that kind of gets in the way of the RoboCop versus Terminator thing that I had in mind. But this is just all like hypothetical anyway. But I do think it would definitely be somewhere like in the mid 90s would be definitely when I would have this film be released. And I would even borrow The Last Stand. the name of the comic. I think that actually is very fitting. RoboCop: The Last Stand. I think that's a fitting title. I think it really does work. But anyway, I got really nothing else to say about this what if, except thanks for watching, and until next time, see you later.